Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again on Itzamar. It's Friday, and let's get right down to our Torah portion as we approach Rosh Hashanah. This week's portion, Parshat Nitzavim, is the last Shabbat, the last Torah portion we're going to be reading before the new year. I'd like to begin with a midrash in Tanchuma that talks about the first man. It's a very, in my opinion, very interesting midrash. And midrash talks about what happened during the 12 hours of New Year, the first New Year in the universe. When man was created is really the New Year. And what happened? What happened again on Rosh Hashanah? So Midrash says like this: Borei mitchilat breto shel olam hakol yamutar. Midrash says, the beginning of creation, everything was allowed. Shneimar ki yerek esev natati lechem kol. Just like the grass of the ground, God gave everything to the first man. They could have eaten anything they wanted to eat. They could have eaten without a problem. But when the Jewish people stood on Mount Sinai, God added on so many commandments, 613 commandments, in order to allow them to receive great reward by keeping the 613 commandments. So the Midrash asks a very, very important question. Im kain, if this is the truth, lama lo tziva l'adam harishon, why wasn't the first man commanded 613 commandments? Why was he only given one commandment? אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, מצווה קלה ציוויתי לו ועבר עליה, כל מצוות הללו איך יכול לקיים? He goes, if I commanded one little mitzvah for the first man of not eating from the tree of knowledge, how could I give him 613 commandments? He would really make, who knows what would he do to 613 commandments? So now, think about that. So the Gemara goes on, the Tanchuma goes on to explain, Bo b'yom shenitztava bo. Not only that, the same day that God commanded the first man to do not to eat from the tree of knowledge, Bo b'yom bitel v'avar aleim. That same day, the same day he was commanded, the same day he already transgressed that commandment. V'lo haya yochol lamod b'tzivu yom achad, and he couldn't even stand for one day not to sin. So now Rabbi Yehuda ben Pedaya is going to explain in the Midrash a little bit more detail of what happened that day of the first, when man was created, the day again of New Year. Yud bet Shaot Havi Hayom. The 12, we all know there are 12 hours in the day. The first hour, the concept of creating man came up in God's mind. Bashniya, the second hour, the second hour, God turned to the angels to have a little meeting up there about the whole concept, the whole idea of creating man. By Shlishit Kinei Safaro, on the third hour, God started gathering in the earth together that He made man from. On the fourth hour, Giblo, He started mixing it together, the batch. B'chamishi Rikmo, on the fifth hour, He began to formulate the way man is built, the structure of man. B'shishit Hemido Golem, on the sixth hour, He stood him up. The body of man already was a full body form. Bashvi'i dipach bo nishama. On the seventh hour, listen carefully, He blew a soul into man, as it says, Vayipach bapav nishmat chayim. God blew within his nostrils the breath of life. Bashminit, on the eighth hour, Yichniso legan Eden, He put him into the Garden of Eden. Batshi'it, on the ninth hour, Tzivao mizeh achol mizeh lo tochal. On the ninth hour, He gave him the commandment: from this tree you can eat, from this tree you can't eat. That was the ninth hour. What happened on the 10th hour? Basirit chatan. On the 10th hour, he already sinned. Be'achatesre nidon. On the 11th hour was the hour of the judgment. So, 10th hour he sinned. On the 11th hour he was judged. Be'shtemesre, on the 12th hour, nidgaresh, he was already thrown out of the garden. Wow. So the Midrash goes on to say, V'shelo amad b'tzivui afilu shachar. For one little measly hour, the first man, after he stood up and he had his soul within him, he couldn't hold back from sinning. This is the ta'ana, this is the claim that the Midrash is making in Tanchuma. For why didn't Hashem allow the first man, or give the first man, the option of doing all the 613 commandments? And of course, there are many, many questions that stem from this particular Midrash. First of all, we all know that all of mankind came out of the first man, as the Jewish nation as well included. We did come from the first man, and we're all trying to, again, rectify this world. The nation of Israel's job is to rectify, of course. together with the entire world. The world has to make a rectification. But what happened on Mount Sinai that made a difference for all the Jewish people that we now receive 613 commandments, and God is giving it and God is relying on us. He relies on the nation of Israel that they can do these 630 commandments without complaining too much and transgressing over these laws. And this is something the intrinsic quality of the nation of Israel is that they have to do these 630 commandments. It is very interesting how many, in the course of the last few years, particularly, I've had many conversations and have all the time, frequently have conversations with non-Jewish friends, that a lot of them that have some that have left completely Christianity, and they're not Jewish yet. I mean, a lot of them say, well, maybe one day they will convert, but they're in between, they're sort of in between that world of before converting, but in between somewhere, like not here, not there. So a lot of time we have these conversations, and number one of the questions I receive often is why wasn't the nations of the world commanded all the 613 commandments like the Jewish people? Why only 7? Some people want to do more than 7, right? Well, I'm not going to get into all details, because for sure the 7 commandments of Noachide laws are just the basics, the beginnings. And if someone really learns it in depth of what our rabbis are teaching us and learns the Rambam, the laws of the Noachide laws, we see they're just the basis of adding more. As a person grows spiritually, even a non-Jew is allowed to take upon himself other commandments as well. But I'm not really going to go into that depth. So it's not that a non-Jew can take more than that. But we have to try to understand, here God is coming against the first man that even one mitzvah, one commandment he wasn't able to do. And it's interesting. It's something that is what applies to this very day. You have to understand where that comes from. But before I answer this question and try to understand a little bit more about the first man and how the Jewish nation came about, being commanded 613 commandments, I want to bring another Gemara, another Talmud down, a passage of another Midrash brought down in Talmud, which talks about Elijah the prophet. And this will all connect to the new year, and we'll connect to this week's portion if we have enough minutes left in this YouTube, which is always limiting to me to 15 minutes. I'm always cutting things sometimes short. And the Gemara says like this: Eliyahu Avishachiach b'metifta derabi. Eliyahu Navi, Elijah the prophet, used to visit. It was quite often the yeshiva of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Judah the great prince, who was the author of the Mishnah, the oral law. Think about it. People on a very high spiritual level, great rabbis, great righteous rabbis, have been merited in visits by Elijah the prophet. Helped study Torah with them to give them some Torah insights. Angels meeting them. He has an angel, he's a prophet of Elijah, and he's visiting the yeshiva of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Judah the prince. Yom Echad Reish Yalchavi. One day it was new moon. Think about what the new moon represents. Nagale Veloata. He was a little late. Elijah, prophets can be late. Can angels be late? You see that here. He was a little late coming to visit in the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Amale Maitama Nagale Lamal. And he said, what is the reason that you are late? Rabbi Yehuda Nasi asked, when he finally arrived, Elijah, he asked him, what are you late for? What happened? Amarle ada okimna laVavram umashina diade umatzle umaginale. Because I have to take care of Abraham now. Don't forget, Elijah is coming from the upper worlds, up there in the soul world there. Abraham's above. And he goes, I have to wake him up, wash his hands. He had to daven, pray. And after that, I had to help him get back to bed. Then he goes on to say, V'cheli Yitzchak, V'cheli Yaakov, the same thing I did to Isaac and then I did to Jacob. So he had to take care of the forefathers up there. And the time he got finished with all that hampering and pampering, he got late, and that's why he wasn't there. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi asks a very important question. He says like this: why don't you bring them all together? What's the big deal? You should have brought them all together. Savri takbe berachme. So what did he say to him? He goes, if they would have all gotten up together, they all would have prayed together, their prayers would have been so powerful. They would have brought Messiah before its time. So if they would have done all that prayers, they would have shaken the entire world with their prayers, and the Messiah would have come in that moment. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Judah the prince, asked Elijah, is there a rabbi in this world that has the power to bring the Messiah so fast, to make the Messiah come faster? Amale Ika, yeah, there's a great rabbi, Rabbi Chia Uvanav. And his name was Rabbi Chia, and his sons, they were very, again, apparently tremendous saints, that the largest saying, that within them the power of tefillah, the power of prayer is so powerful that they can bring about Mashiach if they just pray. Wow. What happens? The minute Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the minute Yehuda the Prince hears that there are these great rabbis in the world that can do that, Gazar Rabbi Tanita. So what did Rabbi Yehuda Nasi do? He declared that there's going to be a fast. And the fast days, we know there's much more mercy that awakens up in the upper world, and it can be much more effect. So therefore he made a fast. Achtinu Rabbi Chia Uvanav, and he invited Rabbi Chia and his sons to stand before the congregation, which means to prayer, to lead the congregation in prayer. Usually one person leads. Here was three, because on fast more than one usually leads the congregation. Amar Mashiva Ruach v'Nashva Tzika. As we know, in the beginning of the Shemona Esrei, the 18 benedictions, which really are 19 now, one of the things we saw mentioning during the winter months is Mashiva Ruach u'Morid HaGeshem. God stirs up the wind, and then he brings the rainfall. So the minute they said those words of Mashiva Ruach, God stirring up the wind, v'Nashva Tzika, all of a sudden they hear a wind roaring. Amar Morid HaGeshem. And then the next thing Rabbi Chia said was, let the rain come. V'atamitra, and it began to rain. Wow, what a prayer. Ki mata lemeimar mechayeh mitim. What was the next word after that? Mechayeh mitim. Blessed, because we say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed you Hashem, mechayeh mitim, that revives the dead. When he's ready to mention the resurrection, the revival of the dead, what happens? Ragash alma, the entire world had an earthquake. Noise. Amri biraki, all of a sudden in the upper heavens the voice was heard. Man gali razia ba'alma, who's revealing secrets in the world? What's going on over here? Who's revealing? The Mashiach was about to come now. Who's revealing the secrets of the world? Amar Eliyahu. So they said, Eliyahu and Elijah the prophets, he's revealing them his secrets to bring Messiah. Atiyua Eliyahu. So they bring in Elijah. They brought him out against the upper heavens to deal with him a little bit. Machiu shitin pusi denura, and he got slapped with 60 pulsa denura, 60 blades of fire or flames of fire. Ata. So what happens afterwards? Eliyahu comes back after he got hit with this big fire. He comes back down to the yeshiva of where Rabbi Chia and his sons are davening in front of everybody. He now looked like a bear on fire, a fire bear. Al beinayu v'tradinu. And so what happens? This bear that came on fire, he entered them, which means he started running around Rabbi Chia and his sons who were praying, and he completely distracted them from their prayers, and they weren't able to bring Messiah at that moment. This is the story of the Talmud brings down. So how do I connect between these two things? And Elijah the prophet, who, again, as time runs out, I want to mention one third concept which will bring everything hopefully together. On Rosh Hashanah, on the New Year's, we all know we are celebrating the birth of the first man, where it all began, where creation all began with man as being created. And the entire cycle of the universe again is returning to bring the world back to a pre-stage before the first man sinned. By our actions of doing Torah and doing mitzvot and building the world, we're bringing the world back to the stage, that first stage before the first man again was able to sin before. And in order to do this, every time in Rosh Hashanah, every time we reach the New Year, we're reaching a situation where on the New Year we have the ability, because it's a special time that we can, again, just what we see here, there are special times where Rabbi Chia and his banav and his children were able to almost bring Messiah. On Rosh Hashanah is a special moment in the world that can actually allow us to get a step closer to bringing Mashiach coming. And this we do through the shofar. By blowing the shofar, the horn of the shofar, we have the power again to awaken the voice, the heavenly voice, because shofar reminds us of the way we blow into the shofar is what God blew the spirit of life within us. And I see right now I'm getting very, very close to the end of the time, and I really want to continue this lesson, which I may have to do on Sunday. And therefore, when we blow the shofar out, we're sort of emulating that process of creation, how man at the 7th hour, before man sinned. And that is the amazing thing of the Shah, to bring us back to that pre-stage of before the sin of the first man. This is only the first lesson. I will have to continue this, I see, because time is now up. Shabbat Shalom. We'll get you on hopefully on Sunday for the rest.